Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers postgame show. I'm joined, as always, well, I guess not as always, but most of the time this season, by my co-host Lance Williams, who normally joins me on the flagship podcast, The Standard is the Standard, and we're here to talk about the Steelers' Week 3 win. Wait, what was that? A win? Yes, they actually won a football game. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, 30-27. But don't worry, Steeler fans, in the world of website editing and website numbers, you can't ask for much more than this. They did enough to win, but plenty to complain about. That means that traffic will be good this week, folks. Let me introduce Lance Williams into the show. Lance, what's going on, man? What do you think? What a crazy game that was.
Yeah, I think you described it right. They got to win, but there's enough to complain about. There's so much meat on the bone. This is a very interesting football team, and looking at their defense, this is not going to be the type of season that your granddad, your great uncle, or your friend or your cousin from around the corner is used to. This isn't Steeler football. This is a ton of passing and bad defense. And you better get your heart medication because you're going to have palpitations this season because man, great win, but this team is flawed in several areas on the defensive side of football. And there's some warts on the offensive side of football as well.
Well, I'll tell you this, the Steeler offense, and this is not where I want to start. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. This is a Steeler offense that put up 30 points in the first half, did not score again. I don't think it should be noted that they played without the entire right side of their offensive line. B.J. Finney was at right guard, and then Matt Filer played at right tackle, and they were getting abused a lot. There were times I thought Roethlisberger was going to be killed when he dropped back to pass. Yet, nonetheless, they do just enough to win. I want to start here, and it's horrible that I'm starting here, but I'm going to do it anyways. I don't care. Chris Boswell, man, what the you know what I'm about to say. What is going on with this guy? He goes from a Pro Bowler last year who missed, I think, 3 kicks the entire season, and he's already missed 2 extra points, I believe, and 3 field goals. And we're only through 3 weeks of the regular season. Now, in the post-game press conference, Mike Tomlin was asked about Boswell, and he's our kicker. He's a good kicker. He's just got to start putting it through the uprights. Look, Lance, I know that you're a golfer. I'm a golfer. This guy looks like a person that gets on the tee, has the driver in his hand, and has no effing clue where the ball is going to go when he makes contact with it. And it's the same thing with him. You can see it's a mental thing, but it's also, I don't know if it's a physical thing. That field looked like garbage because they had some heavy rains earlier in the day. From what I heard, heard, whatever. I wasn't there, obviously. They're leaving points on the field with these missed field goals. He misses an extra point and he misses a field goal. That's 4 points, and that's the difference between a field goal and a touchdown at the end of the game. Totally different scenario. Anything you want to say about that?
Well, the facts are this: if they cut him, they are it's going to cost him $4.8 million in dead money.
Yeah.
So they can't cut him. He's their guy. And if Tomlin definitely said that in the press conference, that's the attitude that you have to take because he's your guy. You can't get rid of him because you just signed him. You're not going to take the dead money charge on your cap, and you still got to find another guy. He just has to get right. So you have to trust that he's your guy. You have to trust that he's the guy that kicked for you last year. He's the guy that you found he will get weighted right. If we're right now, get it that he's that guy. So I trust what you saw and what is a bend and break defense. Because it's a bend and break defense, they need every single point that they can get. They can't leave any points on the field. So you can't miss field goals. You can't miss extra points. They've got to make everything. But Boswell has got to get it right. He's got to get it corrected because they can't move on from him because of the contract. So I'm sure he will correct it. He can't be any worse than he is now. But right now, it is a problem.
It's a very big problem, and I don't think it's as big as some people believe. But To me, it is. Now, I don't want to be all negative Nancy here. I want to talk about the positives first because there were some noteworthy performances in this game. A couple of note, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger finishes the game with 30 for 38, 353 yards. It's the first time in his career he's ever thrown for 300 yards in each of his 3 games to start the season. He had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, was sacked 3 times for a 120.7 rating. Thought it was pretty solid outing by Roethlisberger, all told. The interception was bad, but it was also a great defensive play. James Conner's stats are very mundane, but man, they got the yards they needed when they needed them in the fourth quarter. Final drive, you need just a first down. He gets them more than that, 15 carries for 61 yards, but it was about when they got those rushes. I'll tell you what, I'm a jersey guy. I only have Ben Roethlisberger jerseys, but I always love talking to people about what jersey to get. If I'm looking for a jersey right now, a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, I'm looking at a number 19. Juju Smith-Schuster is turning into an absolute monster, and I know that a lot of that is attributed to Antonio Brown's success and the fact that he's drawing double coverage every time. But Juju Smith-Schuster finishes the game with 9 receptions on 11 targets, 116 yards receiving, 43-yard long, 12.9 average. That was a tremendous game from him. Vance McDonald, with the stiff arm of the century, folks.
Oh
He
yes.
didn't just knock Chris Connie on his rear end. He knocked him out of the game with a, I'm using air quotes if you're listening on podcast, with a knee injury. I guess the knee of Chris Conti is located near his soul, which was sent about 6 feet under the ground. So Vance McDonald, after that 75-yard catch and run touchdown, he finished with 4 receptions, 112 yards on 5 targets. Thought he had a great game. And I'll tell you what, James Washington, he only had 2 catches for 25 yards, but both were third down conversions. Both were difficult catches. He made those. Tremendous game. Defensively, I'm looking at the stats here. The Steelers finished with 3 sacks, um,
But they
13,
had, but they had a lot more
quarterback
pressure.
hits. 13
A lot more
quarterback hits.
pressure. Yeah,
Yes.
they had a lot of pressure. They just couldn't finish the second half due
No.
to the fact that they were on the field a lot. But they had a lot of pressure in this game. They just had to. They need to finish a little bit better, I think.
Absolutely. 13 quarterback hits, 10 passes defense. That's pretty good. Better than last week, at least. And they did score a touchdown with Bud Dupree's pick 6. I thought that Sean Davis didn't play a bad game. He came up and made some nice plays and run support on a few occasions, but getting better in space in center field. I'm not sure what they're doing with Cody Sensabaugh and Artie Burns. They seem to be flopping these guys around. And hey, Lance, I'll throw this to you now so you can chime in. Have you seen where TJ Watt went? Because I haven't seen the guy since week 1. Been very disappointed in his production as of late.
I mean, he's getting flexed out a lot. I mean, he's getting flexed out in coverage. He's having to do some different things more than just rush the passer. I wouldn't worry about him. His motor is still high. I think he's an athletic player. I think he will have his ups and his downs. He's a young player, but I wouldn't worry about him. I mean, I think what we should be happy about as Steeler fans is Bud Dupree showed up. He took the D off his name, put a B on his name, and made it Bud Dupree. I think the defense played really solid football. I don't think it's an A game by any means, but I mean, this is a defense that got ripped up the week before. They went out on the road, got multiple sacks, multiple turnovers, and scored. There's not much more you can ask for your defense to give you, and got a critical stop in the fourth quarter. And that's why football is a beautiful game, because both sides of the ball have to support each other. In the second half, it was critical on the offense to keep the football and to give that defense some rest and possibly score some more points to really put this game out of hand.
I think we might have lost Lance there for a little bit. Bad connection. So, anyways, if you're on YouTube right now, if you're watching with us live,
much better.
Now we're back and forth. Hold on, let me take care of this quickly. We'll make sure we get Lance good. And we'll see if Lance, you there? Are we good now? We kind of lost you there for a sec.
I think so.
Okay, so go ahead and what you were saying.
I mean, it's just. I mean, this is a bend and break defense. I mean that's what it is. They have some significant issues on the back end. I think when Joe Hayden is there, I think you see the secondary play better. But this defense is going to have to be supported by its offense. They're going to have to, I think, call the game a little bit different. I love the way, they're scoring 30 points a game, but man, they're giving up close to 30 as well. So I think they're going to have to call the games a little bit different. I think they're going to have to slow it down just a little to support this defense, to keep this defense off the field. The 30 is great. It's just how you get it. The 41 pass attempts, although Ben was 30 for 38, 353, 120 passer rating, played a very good game. I think the running game has to get going a little bit better, a little bit more. I mean, they only had 18 rushing attempts from running backs. I mean, it has to be better. Connor showed up, in that fourth quarter with some big runs, but they've got to be able to run the ball a little bit better. They have to use some clock. They need to slow the game down just a touch and execute really well in the red zone. But the one thing, Jeff, I think that was big about this game is Ben Roethlisberger has not played well on the road consistently for quite some time. And hopefully, maybe this game gets him out of that road Ben Roethlisberger funk, because Ben was outstanding in this game, made some critical plays. That play in the fourth quarter to convert that third down was absolutely first ballot Hall of Fame-esque. And, maybe Ben got out of that funk. And so a lot of positives. They get the win, but this is definitely a hashtag win and correct game. And I wrote on Twitter, down goes Conti. Down goes Conti. Because that was a knockout. And for you young bucks out there, if you've never heard that famous call, down goes Frazier.
Yes,
By the legend.
Yes, absolutely. So where do the Steelers go from here? That's a lot of people's questions. Well, they go back to Heinz Field, and that's where they're going to play the Baltimore Ravens in Week 4 on Sunday Night Football. So that's back-to-back primetime games. For those of us on the East Coast, that always sucks. It means there's a lot of really late nights like there is tonight for those of us that are staying up. But hey, for you on the West Coast, Lance, good for you. That means it's a nice, cozy evening for yourself in front of the television. But we're going to break down the Ravens game this upcoming week, both on the standard as well as the preview show that we're doing on Thursdays. But let's dive into these stats a little bit more. I want to look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is the first quarterback maybe in NFL history that has started the season with 3 straight 400-yard games. He went 30 for 50. The interception really weren't his fault. Hey, kudos to the Steelers for taking advantage. He should have had more. I thought he was more accident prone, I guess if you want to call it that. In the last drive when Joe Hayden dropped an interception, Cody Sensabaugh dropped an interception. But the one thing other than Fitzpatrick, which I want to ask you about him in a second, is are you concerned about the secondary? Are you concerned about the defense in general? Is there one area of the defense that you're like, yeah, oh my gosh, this is really, really bad?
The linebackers in coverage and the Sensabaugh Burns bad cornerback combination, they're both bad. They really only have one good corner. Hilton's solid, more of a blitzer than a great coverage guy. Hayden's the only guy they have that they could depend on back there in coverage. Their cornerbacks are trash. So if the Le'Veon Bell rumors are true in terms of trying to make a trade, it needs to be for a third rounder or an inside linebacker and or a corner. They need some help back there. Sensabaugh and Burns are not playing with confidence. And you can really tell that Artie Burns is not playing with confidence. He looks like a player that's afraid to make mistakes. But I'm looking at the live chat, I think the guys that are chiming in are absolutely correct. The Steelers got to clean up the penalties. That has to get cleaned up looking forward. They're not going to win football games with the amount of penalties that they're having, because they're just not good enough on the defensive end. They are playing with a very, very, very small margin for victory. because that defense is just not good enough at the moment.
Yeah, speaking of penalties, the Steelers finished with 13 penalties for 155 yards. Those are only accepted penalties, listeners. It could have been worse than that. The Tampa Bay Bucks finished with 9 for 80 yards. I know there were at least 4 combined roughing the passer calls. I don't know if it's just Tony Correni and his team, but 22 accepted penalties in a game, it just kills the momentum of the game. And again, if a penalty is egregious and should be called, I'm all for it, whether regardless. But at the same time, that Pat roughing the passer call on Roethlisberger, where I think it was JPP just brushed the backside of his helmet. I mean, that's absurd. And that's absurd. It slows the game down and it makes everyone question every single call. It's just horrible. Look at the possession time was pretty even, although I'd love to see that by quarter because I don't have that statistic in front of me. Because I think Ben Roethlisberger after the game said that he felt that they only had the ball 3 times in the second half. I don't think that's
Correct.
true. Is it
Correct.
only three times?
It was 4 drives because they got the ball. The first time they got the ball was with 7 minutes left on the clock in the third quarter. So they had it 4 times. So the last drive was the end of the game. So they got it at 7:07. And then the next drive, I think, was in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes left on the clock, then at 5:43. So they only had it 3 times, really. And when they got it that last time on that fourth drive, that's when they.
Yeah, and you're breaking up again a little bit, Lance.
That's 16 against 20. So they ran, if I can math, that's 30 snaps in the second half, plus 12, 28 plays. So, yeah, they didn't have the ball.
Yeah.
They on the second half. So it was weird. The flow of the game was really changed because let me just give you this stat, Jeff, as we're both looking at the game book. When you look at Tampa Bay in their drives in the second half, they had a 14-play drive, 12-play drive, 9-play drive, back to back to back. So, you're looking at, what is that, 36 snaps?
Yeah.
So they basically had the ball the majority of the second half. And then, of course, they got a field goal and 2 touchdowns on those drives.
Well, I think that was ultimately their demise because they are such a high-powered, high-flight offense that when the Steelers were actually forcing them to drive, they were just taking up so much time. And I think they just ran out of time. If the game were 5 minutes longer, I think they would have scored again. It's just the Steelers' defense was gassed. They had nothing on the pass rush, and they weren't even getting to Fitzpatrick. They were vulnerable on the back end. But just look at these numbers here. The one number stands out to me in the team statistic category, Lance. Third down efficiency, the Pittsburgh Steelers were 3 for 11.
You hit that. I was looking at that.
3 for 11. That's really, really bad. Didn't run a fourth down play. Red zone, 1 for 1 for the Steelers. And the defense, hey, your boys held them to 2 for 5 on the red zone.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, and I'm glad you hit that factoid with the third down efficiency, because if you look in the Kansas City game, and that's pretty incredible, because if you look in the Kansas City game, if I'm not mistaken, they were 3 of 11 in the Kansas City game. So let me make sure. Yep, they were 3 of 11. So they're 6 of 22 on third down on the last 2 games. That's not good enough. But the incredible thing is, in those 2 games, they still probably average 34 points a game, averaging 27% on third down. And that's the thing that's going to have to change for them moving forward with this bend and break defense, is that they're going to have to sustain drives, and the drives are going to have to be longer. So if you're going to score 30 points, it's going to have to be after 8, 9 play drives that get you and result in a touchdown. They cannot have a quick striking offense and sustain this defense. They need a slowly matriculated downfield, be really efficient in the red zone, score touchdowns, and use clock. They have to minimize the drives that opposing offenses have, and they're going to have to protect this defense until it gets better.
Yeah, I'm looking at the live chat here now as we kind of wind down here. A lot of people complaining about the roughing the passer. It's tough to That's league wide. That wasn't just in this game. One of our readers says that Bostic, he seems to be getting better every week, and he's demanding a shout out from you, Lance. The John Bostic deserves a shout out. So you gonna do that or not?
No, man, Bostic is terrible in coverage, man. And I'm not giving Bostic a shot. He's good in the run. He was laying some wood, man, but they're terrible in coverage. And that's one thing that you see consistently with this defense is that teams are going to take advantage of the fact that you got two backers that aren't very good in coverage. And what you're going to see is what Tampa did. Tampa went 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends to keep those linebackers on the field so you can attack them in coverage. I'm looking for the Steelers to make an adjustment to that. I'm going to look at the all 22, and maybe they did tonight. It's kind of hard to tell from the TV copy, but I think you might want to match that up differently. Take one of those linebackers out, put a safety on the field. They probably couldn't do that because Burnett was out, but I don't like those two linebackers in coverage. Bostic played better, but I don't know if he deserves a shout out. The defense still gave up 27 points. They looked terrible in the second half. So I'm used to a high standard of linebacker play in Pittsburgh. I don't know if John Bostic has gotten there yet. He might need to chop some more wood. Call me week 16. Maybe I'll give him a shout out then.
Well, sorry, Thomas. I think it was who it was that left the comment. You're not getting that shout out this week. Hey, kudos. Someone brought this up. Terrell Edmonds with his first interception in the NFL. I thought it was a nice play. A kid has good run after the catch skills too. I mean, he's got some speed, and he really was putting the throttle down. I thought he might take that thing to the house. But you know what? He's still a work in progress. He still has some issues. You could definitely see they've limited him in his responsibilities in the back end and kept him closer to the line of scrimmage, and that might work out for him. We'll see. I know that coming up, they don't have the high-powered offense that they faced the last 2 weeks. The Baltimore Ravens have put up points, but I don't think that Joe Flacco and company are anywhere near as elite, if you want to call them that, as Patrick Mahomes and Fitzmagic have been up to this point. So let's see here. Someone asked, where's Marcus Allen? He is still on the roster, but he's inactive every week, barring an injury. They're choosing to put Nat, I think it's Berhe. I can't say. Berhe. I'm not asking you because you don't know anyone's name, but he's inactive every week. Someone asked, why won't they play Jalen Samuels? I don't know. I don't think they really need to play them at this point. There's really no spot for them. I think that when they signed Ryan Switzer, it kind of limited what they're going to do with Jalen Samuels based on the fact that if you're gonna play Ryan Switzer because he's your return specialist, then you might as well use him and not just have him out there for a handful of plays every game. So you saw him catch a touchdown today on that little that little out pattern. They'll run some jet sweeps with him, things like that. I've liked Switzer so far. I thought he's not mind-boggling awesome or anything like that, but he's doing his job. So if you were to say, Lance, your losers for the game, who would you say? Like, who would be your losers?
I did write that down. I would say the officials.
Okay.
The officials
I agree with that.
terrible.
I agree with that.
The officials are absolutely terrible. Nobody wants to see penalties. And Randy Fichtner.
What?
I think Randy Fichtner has to get this running game going. I think it's going to be critical for the success this year. It is too tilted. I mean, I think the run-pass distribution is probably close to 70-30. It's too tilted to pass the run. They're going to have to balance this out and, let Connor run the ball a little bit more, let Ridley run the ball. I think they're really going to have to just change how they approach, how they kind of want to protect this defense. I think they're going to have to play offense with the thought that they have to protect this defense. I mean, it's not a huge zero. I mean, I have to pick somebody. So I'm saying Fichtner. You could obviously throw in Chris Boswell because he's not playing very well. So I'm going to go with officials, Randy Fichtner and Chris Boswell. And, of course, my hero is your hero. You have him on your chest, and you have all of his jerseys. Lift it up for the listeners.
Number 7, Big Ben. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, we're not going to get into all that detail because that'll be on Wednesday when we do our standard is the standard talk. But honestly, we have a lot to digest here. And this the game for those that are listening in podcast form or watching us on YouTube the day after, the game just ended. So, Lance and I are looking at stats and we're trying to figure out what are the talking points. Maybe down the road, I wish we could get some type of call in or, I like the comments we're getting so far. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if this team has an identity. That's what I kept on thinking about, Lance, is does this team have an identity or is this team going to be, and I'm talking more offensively, or is this team just going to be you know what, here's what we're going to have to do to win this game and let's go out and sling the rock 60 times because that's what we're going to need to do to put up points. And we need to put up points because our defense can't keep guys off the board. So maybe that's what this offense is going to be. It's not going to be an identity of balance. It's not going to be an identity of we're going to run the ball 25 times. It's not going to be a, 2 yards in a cloud of dust. I honestly think that might be the trend of this offense. I might not like it. You might not like it, but let's be honest, that might be reality that we're in right now. It's just do what you got to do, right?
Of course. I mean, the coordinator is the quarterback's friend. So, I mean, we know what the offense is going to be. I mean, Ben's going to put up probably his best passing yard numbers of his career this year. Ben, I think we asked the question, will Ben throw for 5,000 yards? He might this year. If the passing totals look like they are currently, I mean, he's probably averaging close to 45 attempts a game. Over 40. He's going to throw for close to 5,000. So that's what this offense is going to be. He's going to throw it a ton. They're going to score a ton. But I had a guy on Twitter, I forget the guy's name, and you know who you are out there because I think I responded to it on Twitter. He asked if Artie Burns was a bust. And I'm going to ask you, Jeff, and then I'm going to respond. What do you think about Artie Burns? I know he's struggling right now. Do you think Artie Burns is a bust?
What is this, his third year?
Yes.
He has shown improvement. So I'm not going to say any player that's improved is considered a bust. Like El Busto, and those that might be listening for the first time, El Busto is the name that Lance and I gave to Jarvis Jones because he is a bust. That guy never got any better, ever. And I have seen improvement in Artie Burns. I've seen improvement in run support, especially this year. I think he's tackling a lot better. He still has his brain farts, but he's not. I'm not willing to say he's a bust yet. That's just what I'll say. I'll say that. To your point on Ben Roethlisberger, through 3 games, he's already thrown for over 1,100 yards. Through 3 games.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
It's pretty incredible. He's actually Fitzpatrick has already thrown for 1,400, I think, and that's not only a stupid stat. I mean, that's just insane. He and Roethlisberger this year are at the top. I saw on Sports Center after the game. I want to say they were like in the top 10 for most passing yards in NFL history through 3 weeks of football. So that's pretty remarkable when you look at it that way. So we'll see. Let me see if we have any other questions here, Lance, before we call it quit.
Let me give you my thoughts on Burns real quick while you look up a question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The way I explained it to the guy on Twitter was, I don't think Burns is a first-round guy. Marcus Lattimore is a first-round guy from New Orleans. That's a first-round corner that comes in the league and can play and is probably a dominant player. Ward is showing flashes for the Browns of being a high first-round pick guy. Artie Burns was probably a third-rounder, a third or a fourth-round guy. But when you get drafted in the first round, you have first-round expectations. I just don't think he's probably a first-round talent. Unfortunately for the Steelers, he's probably more like a third or fourth-round talent, which is fine. It's just the Steelers drafted him in the first round. So, I think Burns will be a solid guy. In Pittsburgh, we've had, Deshae Townsend, I mean, so you've had Chad Scott, who was a first round guy, but was an average player. We've had Ike Taylor, that was a solid player. I mean, the Steelers have had very good corners in their history in the past, but recently, in this successful years, and even under Tomlin, they really haven't had a dominant shutdown corner. So Burns can still be functional and usable. I think he just has to start playing a little more confidently.
Well, let's not forget that when he was drafted, the Cincinnati Bengals stole the corner that they wanted right out from underneath their nose, and that was William Jackson III, who is a legitimate cornerback, in my opinion. I think he gives Antonio Brown more fits than anyone else in the National Football League. And it felt like at the time, and I can't say this with any type of certainty, it felt like the Steelers didn't know what they were doing. When William Jackson went off the board, it almost felt like they had a knee jerk reaction, like, who's the next cornerback on our board? And like, Artie Burns, but he's probably like a 2 or a 3. I'll take him anyways. That's what it felt like. Because they knew they had to address the cornerback position, and Artie Burns does have man-to-man coverage skill set, as they call it, but whatever. I like how someone brought up my favorite player, and I can't believe I didn't talk about him tonight. I talked about jerseys. I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't get a Juju jersey. I'd probably get a Jordan Berry jersey because that'll be good for like another. That'd be good for like another week, maybe, and then it'll be completely ruined and worthless. So Jordan Berry sucked again, in my opinion, but he wasn't helped out by his special teams very much. The special teams play was atrocious, penalties galore. He did have 2 punts that would have been down on the 1-yard line. One of them was led to the Bud Dupree interception. The other one was negated by a really stupid penalty, and then Darius Hayward-Bay went off on the official and got another penalty. Great discipline, guys. But still, Jordan Berry, there are times where you're thinking, okay, Steelers went 3 and out. This is when you need a big punt. This is when you need the punter to step up and pin them back and flip the field. It just never happens. It just never happens. And again, we talked about this, Lance. If it's the holding that's keeping him around, Chris Boswell sucks right now. Maybe a change will do him good. So, but Jordan Berry, I guess you could say, was a step forward, but I don't think it was still that good. Yeah, Darrell Grant brings up Bud Dupree as a great point. He had one terrible whiff on Fitz. I actually put on Twitter, I said,
yes, he did.
They said, we want to move Bud to the blind side so the quarterbacks can't see him coming. Fast forward to real life, he still misses. I don't get it. He's like one-on-one with the Fitzpatrick's nameplate, and he misses. But I don't know. Let's see here.
I'm looking at Brandon Drummond.
Yep.
Hey, Brandon. They won a game. It's a big dub. We know it's okay. 1-1-1. Learn to love it. Can you win in slots with 1-1-1? Or is that just 7? Is that just 7-7-7?
Yeah, I think it's 7. Well, trips will get you something, but 7-7-7 is a big winner.
Yeah. So Brandon, a win is a win, is a win, is a win, is a win. And don't you feel better tomorrow, Brandon? Going to work 1-1-1.
Well, you know what's going to make you feel better, Brandon and Lance, because I'm sure you're still probably down in the dumps. You're a negative guy, anyways. He picked against the Steelers, folks. In case you missed that segment of the show on Wednesday, I did not, so I win. You lose. In the standings right now, in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers are above the New England Patriots. So there you go.
That is always great.
1-1 beats 1-2. Yes.
And if my brother eventually listens to the podcast, what say you? What say you?
Goodness.
How about dilly?
Dilly, indeed. Well, you know what? That's been a good show. Here's what's coming up for you folks that are listening. We did have some news today on the podcast platform. We have now started the BTSC podcasting platform. If you followed us on the standard as a standard on iTunes, nothing will have changed. You will automatically be moved over to the new platform without any issues. If you follow us on YouTube, nothing will change there. Our shows and myself and Lance in the post game and the standard as a standard and our preview show will still be on YouTube. But there you'll find all of our stuff. And you can find us now on Spotify, on Google Play, For any Android user, you can find us there, as well as for your Apple users on iTunes. Check us out. There's an article on the website about that, and make sure you really enjoy our stuff, because this is the time where you treasure it. Because the Steelers win, and they're 1-1-1. It was off a big win on prime time, and it was an undefeated opponent that was red hot. This wasn't like one of those stumbling wins over, some crap team with a crap quarterback. This was a red hot team. It was a much earned win. I'm happy that the Steelers won. They still have work to do, as Mike Tomlin says. We're not going to paint with a broad brush, but you know what? If your paint is red, Lance, you're going to paint your barn red, obviously. So I just used 3 Tomlinisms in succession. I should get some type of prize.
I didn't understand any of that. You said paint your barn. What?
Oh my gosh, you don't remember him say that?
I don't understand.
He was talking about. Someone asked him a question about like personnel and stuff, and he basically said that if you have this type of personnel, then you run this type of offense or defense. And that's when he said, if you have red paint, you paint your barn red. And he always says he's going to paint with a broad brush, and he says obviously 50 million times. And I love it. I love it. I watch every Tuesday.
Popcorn. I like popcorn. That's the one I like. Popcorn.
If those of you that watch the show every single week and you watch the press conferences, the paint the barn red quote, because he said it more than once, just like he says, we're going to keep the light on for him in case he, the injuries, like for instance, Mike Hilton had an elbow injury. It's being evaluated. We're going to keep the light on for him. We're going to let his practice participation dictate his availability for this weekend's game.
You did that pretty impressively. I have heard him say that verbatim. Jeff's impressive. Jeff is impressive.
Hey, aren't you giving me props, man? We're texting. This is just a story for the fans as we end the show. We're texting during the game, as we always do. And Lance says Steelers need a first down. And what did I say? Who did I say to throw the ball to?
Juju, but I took credit for that. I took credit for that.
How? I'm the one that said Juju. You didn't say anything.
Because I wrote it on Twitter before when you told me. Then I wrote it on Twitter. And so that means I took credit for that. So
okay. Well, that sounds about right. That sounds about par for the. That sounds about par for the course. We'll throw in another golf lingo there. So, folks, thanks for staying up late. If you're watching with us live, make sure if you didn't follow us on YouTube, go to YouTube, type in BTSC Steelers Radio, subscribe, like, give us a thumbs up, comment. We appreciate all the support in that area. And we will see you on Wednesday. That's only 2 days away, folks, for another episode of The Standard is a Standard.